Hey, what's up everybody? It's Dan2 here with more Stormbound. Today I'm going to be going through a video where I talk about a game that I played with Tangboy, who's a really great Stormbound player. He actually took first in the last Discord tournament. And I'm going to be going over the in-game decisions that I'm making while I'm playing step by step. So, when you're in-game, there's usually three kinds of decisions that you have to make. The first one is how to advance your board position, how to keep the opponent away from your front line, or how to advance yours if you're trying to kill them. And the second kind is how to play for value. And this one is usually a little more obvious. For example, if you play a unit that drains other opponents' units, then you'll probably play it where there's the most enemy units to drain. And the last kind is how to sequence your cards. There's a lot that can go into the order that you play your cards. For example, you usually want to do the random effects first. Like if you cycle a card or if you play Summon Militia, you would do these before you play your other cards. But a lot of other factors can also come into this. For example, whatever card that gets played or cycled first will tend to come up before the rest of your cards again. So if one card in your deck is better, then you might want to play it before you play other cards, or you might want to play it even before you cycle cards. Today, I'm only going to be talking about how to position units on the board. This is a pretty complicated thing to go into, and this one game isn't going to be enough to cover all of it. Think of today as more of an intro into how to position your units. So this is the deck that I'm going to be playing. You'll notice the levels are not that upgraded, but I'm going to be playing a level 1 game with Tangboy today. So we're playing equal levels where everything is going to be pretty weak. So if you're in the rank 25 to rank 30 range, this video is probably going to be a lot more relatable to you than the rest of my other gameplay. I'll probably be doing a lot more level 1 games in the future because I think these are actually really fun and they're a lot more educational because a lot of the times high rank games is just who has more upgraded cards. So I'm not going to be talking about deck construction today. You'll notice that this deck is a little on the slow side. It pretty much seeks to live until we can land Temple Guardians and then win from there. Alright, let's get started. So when you're opening a board and you don't have any 2 movement units, there's pretty much 2 ways to advance your board. Now the first strategy is to put your units far away from each other and both up. So the advantage of this is 1, you're immune to AoE effects. Like for example, Witches of the Wild could drain your units if they were close together. And the second advantage is that if the opponent wants to move past both of your units, they either need to kill one of your units or they have to move in between it and then wait a turn before their front line can pass. The second common formation is to put 1 unit forwards and then 1 unit right behind it. The advantage to this is more for a player who's going second, in that unless the opponent plays a 2 movement unit, they're not going to be able to kill both of your units in a single turn. So this way, you can usually guarantee that your front line is at least 1 line above your baseline. So I'm going first, and I'm going to opt for the first formation here. Now, Tangboy does a really clever play here. He moves both units up to plug my front line. So over here, if I was an aggressive deck, I wouldn't actually be able to advance my line anywhere. From an aggressive perspective, this is also a really strong play. If I let his Azure Hatchers move up next turn, then he can put a unit at this circled cross, and whatever unit that is will be perfectly defended by the Azure Hatchers. It's actually a really common kind of strategy that you've probably seen already. And this is actually particularly effective because if I do use a unit to kill his Azure Hatchers, there's a chance that the Azure Hatchers will actually spawn a Toad in this second circled X over here, which means that I need to expend another unit to kill that frog before I can hit the first circled X. So the obvious play here is that I need to play Cabin Girls, because I can only play 1 card this turn, and Cabin Girls has the most strength. So no matter what I do, I'm going to have to defend against this Azure Hatchers somehow. The 2 plays here are to either play a unit directly in front of the Azure Hatchers to block it, or to play a unit to the right of it, so that he can't advance a unit to the original circled X. Now, note that no matter which play I make, he's going to be able to do the same thing on the left side with his pirate, which is unfortunate, and which is why Tangboy's play was so good. However, it's better to block the Azure Hatchers than to block the pirate, because the Azure Hatchers, once again, can spawn units after it dies, which makes it even more problematic. So over here, I'm going to opt to kill the Azure Hatchers by putting Cabin Girls right in front of it. I had to close the app here because the game glitched out, but as you can see, Tangboy did exactly what we thought he would do, which was to advance the unit that's protected by his pirate. So over here, I kind of have two different decisions. So I can either play Mistwives, or I can play Freebooters along with Summon Militia. Now, when you're defending your base, the two tiles that you want to take control of are the two X's over here. And it's exactly the same reason why Tangboy was trying to get to these two tiles, which is because if the person who's attacking owns it, then he can play units that are protected, like his Dubious Hags here. And if the player who's defending owns it, then it's very hard for the opponent to advance their front line. As you can see, any unit that he plays that moves on the left or the right side will have to attack your unit first. So in the next turn, we're going to see the Toad on the very right side move down one. And we're actually pretty okay with that because it's a 1 strength unit and it doesn't matter that much. Out of the 2 blue crosses, the only tile that we really need to defend against is the one that the pirate is on. So over here, I'm going to choose to play my Mistwives to kill the pirate. A second play here would be to put 1 unit on each of these 2 blue crosses, which would actually be an even stronger play because now there would be no way for the opponent to advance their front line next turn without killing either one. However, the problem here is that if I use Freebooters and then Summon Militia, there's a very high chance that Summon Militia won't actually land on one of these blue crosses, and then it's possible to be screwed over in the coming turns. In general, I would take the safer play as opposed to the random play. The only time that I would take a random play is if I'm going to lose if I don't take it, or if the worst possible case is still okay. So a lot of the times, you'll see players who use First Mutineer to discard a card, and then try to not discard North Sea Dog so that they can play North Sea Dog for a lot of value. And I'd say that that's usually an okay choice because in the worst case, you probably still have other cards that you can play to empty your mana. However, in this case, if Summon Militia lands on either of these 2 blue crosses, then we're going to have very little board control right outside of our base, so we're going to be in a lot of trouble here. So over here, I think that relying on randomness isn't good, and Mistwives is the better play. So over here, Tangboy makes a really nice play with Witches of the Wild for a total of a 6 strength swing, which basically matched the 6 strength from our Mistwives. But luckily for us, his Summon Militia actually gets pushed pretty far back, which is actually super fortunate. So now over here, as you guys should know already, the biggest threat that we can see is this frog moving up and then the enemy putting something in the circled cross. The opponent knight is going to move up to right outside our base next turn, but that's actually okay because even if they defend this knight somehow by putting something in the 3rd column from the left, a 1 strength knight isn't going to damage our base that much. And compared to the other threats, it's actually not that bad. Out of the 2 blue crosses that we want to defend, only the one on the left is that important. So the optimal play here would be to defend the blue cross with either Freebooters or Gifted Recruits, and then to play from there. Either draw something from Freebooters and then try to play the highest value, or to roll Summon Militia and hope that it puts us in a favorable position. Over here, I actually mess up quite a bit. I go for the offensive play by playing Snowmasons, and then I play Summon Militia. But the 2 problems here is 1, a card sequencing problem, where you should place Summon Militia first to know what's going to happen, and then play Snowmasons. But instead I play Snowmasons first, and so that results in a pretty suboptimal play, and it gives Tangboy a huge advantage. We're pretty screwed over here. Luckily, our hand is good enough that we can play enough units to defend our base, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. A different play here would be to freeze the pirates with Frost Hexers and then to actually attack his base with Gifted Recruits and Rhymelings. And actually, if he can't deal any damage to the units at his front line, that would just win us the game. However, this is actually a really risky play. If he has any sort of poison damage, then we would lose the game outright. So I'm not going to opt for it here. When it comes to defending the base, this is more of a card sequencing problem. Our green prototypes can't actually be used for 1 strength here. It's going to be a net total of 0 strength. So the card sequencing here that I do tries to clear out as many of its units as possible. This last decision here to freeze the 3 strength knights instead of defending my base is so that I can protect the 2 tiles next to my base instead of letting a 3 strength knight be at one of these 2 tiles, which would be really bad if he advanced a high strength unit into the left column touching my base. So right here, I'm actually threatening Tangboy's base by quite a bit. If I'm running Salty Outcasts, then he can't actually let the pirate hit his base, because then he would take 5 damage in the next turn and lose. The safest play for him to make right now would be to pressure my base and deal some damage to the pirate. What he goes for instead is full board control, which isn't a terrible play. There is logic behind it, in that if he can't actually kill me in the next turn, then it's very possible for me to play units to kill him. And so defending his base in some cases would have been the right play. However, over here, I actually run no 2-movement units, and there is very little way for me to kill him. So if he put anything near my base, I probably would have just lost. Instead, he gives me room to play Temple Guardians, and from there, the whole game just goes downhill. I'm not going to comment on the rest of the game, but I'm going to show it to you, just as a demonstration of how powerful Temple Guardians is, especially in level 1 games. There isn't too much to explain here. I could pretty much just play any cards that I wanted, and there's just no way for him to get around the Temple Guardians. So 3 Temple Guardians later, and Tangboy sees that there's no way to win. That's all for this video, guys. I hope that you learned something about board positioning, and peace out.